Shazam!
We're back. Welcome to Pop Culture Coffee Hour, everybody. Three of you. Do you think we even have a Royal 13 anymore, Steve?
I think that the church is seeing a pruning.
So do you think that Pop Culture Coffee Hour is also something that is politically divisive now?
Yes, I think that some people are very strongly on the side of tea, and they find coffee excessively divisive and hard to bear with.
Yeah, it is a pretty exclusive stance to take. You know, if we're saying like, hey, this is going to be a coffee hour, and all other beverages are not welcome.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
You go home now.
I don't even like coffee.
Well, I don't even know why we invited you to be here then.
I don't know.
This has been a failed episode.
Still trying
of
to figure it
Hour.
out.
How did you get here?
Nobody knows. I don't know.
How did you get here? Well, I'm glad you're here for now until you say something else that might screw it up.
Give it time.
This is a safe and affirming place.
Give it a minute. Don't screw it up. Well, I am excited to have you, Erin. I could say some things, but I think I'd rather just kind of maybe ask you if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself. What do you want us to know about you? Welcome to the show, Erin Gata.
I'm so intrigued as to what you would say, but maybe I am not intrigued in a good way. I'm Erin, and I live in Oklahoma. And I think like when I wrote my intro notes, I was like, I'm Erin, and I have a Joe. So I
a cup of Joe.
Yeah. I do like some Joe, just not the kind that you're drinking. No, I work for the Antiochian Archdiocese, and I live in Oklahoma City with my awesome, fun-loving husband, Joe, who is a hoot and a half. And we just live in the middle of the country, like the Oreo cream filling, and means we just get to hop either way whenever. It's great. I don't know.
Yeah, you're the good part of the Oreo.
Right.
And very white.
Arguably double stuffed because the middle states are kind of wide. Also, yes, very wide. Thank you for that. That was good.
Hard conversations here on Pop Culture Coffee Hour.
There it is.
We're going right for the issues.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've always lived I grew up in Kansas, and now I live in Oklahoma, so I'm really not varying too much in my geographical location, but it's a good time in the middle. People are nice here. So
yes. Fun fact about Erin's husband, Dr. Joe, is that he once saved my life.
Now, jury is out as to whether Christian was in fact actually dying, but he felt like he was dying. So he was visiting and sick, and luckily lived with someone with a prescription pad, or stayed with someone with a prescription pad.
Exactly.
So
yeah, it worked out really well. It was actually following the 2013 Youth Workers Conference where I met Steve for the first time. And that was the same sickness with which I was infected at said Youth Workers Conference. So I'm grateful to Dr. Joe for making my life still existent, because had he not been there, I mean, I'm sure I would have died. People die from sinus infections, right?
Maybe.
I'd like to see the data on that.
It's well known. Everyone agrees. Sinus
I feel like, were you traveling by yourself
or killers.
With somebody? I can't remember.
I think I was there by myself. Yeah.
Okay, so whoever was traveling with you might have died from your sinus infection, but I feel like you were going to be okay either way. But if you were driving by yourself, then
listen, I didn't say sinus infections killed the people who had the sinus infections. All right.
It's like a man cold.
Were you traveling on the Oregon Trail, and was it 1856? Because otherwise, I'm not sure how that works.
Because you died of dysentery.
I'm feeling like you guys are really invalidating my experience right now. Okay.
He was really sick, and it sucked.
If there's one person who knows about being sick, it's the sick person. So don't tell me as an outside person what I need and how I felt. You don't know. You weren't there. I mean, you might have been there. I was mostly there.
Okay.
Erin Gata, everybody. Welcome to the show.
What an intro. Wow, I did that to myself. It's fine. No worries.
So You know what time it is? Steve knows what time it is.
I know what time it is.
What time is
it?
It's
a different time for all of us.
True, but in a more foundational, essential sense, it's time for news from Meg.
It is time for news from Meg. So here's our first headline of the day. Herd of deer run amok at a Wisconsin bar, video shows just wanted a Bloody Mary.
I don't blame them.
So here's what happened. Mid-afternoon on March 21st, Dublin's Irish pub got unexpected visitors. That's right, deer desperate for some drinks from a Wisconsin bar took matters into their own hands and jumped through the front window of Dublin's Irish pub.
Wait, is there only one Irish bar in
That
Dublin?
is my question too, for sure.
This is the question that we have. This is the question that we have.
Everything else checks out.
I think Dublin's Irish pub is the name of the Irish pub in Wisconsin. So it was a Wisconsin pub named Dublin's Irish pub. If this is what we're getting lost on, I don't have a lot of confidence for this conversation we're about to have today.
Look, I think this is how hard-hitting investigative journalism works. You sort of you feel for the seam. You're like, wait a minute, there's more than one bar. Did we pay attention when you said that we're in Wisconsin? No, but I digress.
So there is a video, we can link it in the show notes, of the herd of deer that was running up to the establishment, jumping over stuff and running amok on a sidewalk. But one deer was determined to, quote, cause a real splash and careened through the glass window of the pub. I don't know why this is so funny to me.
It sounds very not hygienic.
You know, we were just in Wisconsin.
We were, and we did not break bread with any deer.
Or windows.
So did you even Wisconsin? We don't know.
You know, I guess. So here's my question for you, Erin, is what kind of establishment would be your favorite to jump through the window of?
Ooh, pizza, probably any sort of pizza establishment. I would, if hungry enough, definitely jump through the window.
Wow.
It's like everybody has a food that they could eat the most of, like quantity, right? Like, I don't know, pizza is the thing I can eat the most of. I love a lot of other foods, but I can eat the most pizza.
What's the most pizza that you've ever eaten in one sitting?
Oh, you're going to make me say that?
And more importantly, have you told your priest about it?
Yes. Yeah, that's great. I actually have, so I don't have to lie about that. When we found out that Summer Camp 2020 was being canceled, like in just like a really chaotic way on a chaotic day, we kind of found out at the same time that everybody else in the world found out. And so that made our phones not pleasant to be around. Anyways, Joe was working, he covers a rural hospital a couple times a month. So he wasn't even home. It was April 2020. I'm literally in my house by myself with our lovely dog, Cal, and camp got canceled and I had all of the feelings and I got the biggest cheese pizza from this place called Empire Slice. And it has like New York style pizza. Sorry, Steve, it's Oklahoma's version, but it's like, you know, the slices are like this big and I ate the whole thing.
I'm proud of
you. Along with all of my feelings. I ate the pizza and all of my feelings.
Question, did your feelings and or the pizza come back up later?
The feelings for sure came back. The pizza behaved, so
good. Yeah.
Good. There wasn't much time to eat anything else during the day, so it was, at least I had that benefit of like a fast leading up to the ridiculousness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I like to imagine Jesus eating that pizza with you and saying, you know what, nice. We're going to get through it, Erin. We're going to get through it.
That's so nice.
You should write a book called Finding God in Pizza.
I'll think about it. Okay. Is that the same as Mystic Pizza, like Julia Roberts' first movie? or
yeah,
like
but
Finding God in Pizza? Okay.
But the Orthodox one would be Mystical Pizza.
Mystical. That's true. There's something there. Yeah.
Where the apophatic meets the anchovy.
Guys, maybe you should write the book. You can ghostwrite it. You can ghostwrite it. I'll sign it. It'll be great.
Yes, perfect. In other news, according to the feds, a man smuggled 1,700 reptiles from Mexico and Hong Kong.
That sounds smelly.
Yes, a Southern California man was accused of smuggling more than 1,700 reptiles, including baby crocodiles and Mexican beaded lizards, into the U.S. since 2016, authorities say.
Oh, not all at once, like over time.
No. This was something that he did. But apparently the Border Patrol agents found 60 lizards and snakes tied up in small bags, which were concealed in the man's jacket, pants, pockets, and groin area. Perez allegedly told the agents that all his animals were his pets. These are my pets.
Is that a lizard in your pocket, or are you just smuggling things illegally?
Yeah. I like the defense. No, those are my pets.
Yeah, this one's Larry.
Yeah. Do you always travel with 60 animals tied up in bags and stuffed in your groin area?
Is he selling them?
That's how all of my pets are transported. TSA has no problems with this.
I don't get it. Is he selling them?
Yeah, so apparently what was happening was they were smuggling them in, and he and his sister were in cahoots with it, right? And apparently a bunch of other people. Apparently there's a high demand for baby crocodiles from the Yucatan.
No.
By who?
Yes. The people, Steve.
Sure.
So
specifically the Yucatan?
I guess, man. That's what I'm hearing. Huh. You know, they're just coming in and bringing them in. So I guess you got to commend this guy for his entrepreneurial spirit, though. You know, I feel like he's really living the American dream.
But I do have to say, like, the number was much more impressive when I thought that he was smuggling them all at once. Mm-hmm. Like Erin eating 8 slices of pizza since 2016 is not that impressive, but eating them in one sitting is very impressive, right? I was more impressed with this guy when I thought he did like all of that at once.
Mm-hmm.
So
like
I'm not to nitpick
baby crocodiles stuffed into his groin area all at the same time.
That's what I thought originally.
You know?
Yeah, because then it was like some sort of like Trojan horse situation. Like, what were they in? You know, like, because he wouldn't have been able to fit them all on his person. Did he fashion some sort of giant lizard, or, you know, like I'm picturing the van from Dumb and Dumber, but just filled with reptiles. like the dog van. I don't know, just something really. The vehicle would have been really great to know about, but his body as a vehicle is not great to know about.
So, Steve, here's a question for you: is how would you choose to smuggle 1,700 baby lizards and baby crocodiles?
I would delegate that to somebody else, like some sort of like small business that specializes in the smuggling of small reptiles. Yeah, I go to my Google, trusty Google, and I'd be like, find a smuggler in your area, and I'd find a smuggler, and I'd be like, hello, local smuggler, I have some illegal contraband for you to smuggle. And they would say, are you a narc? And then I would say, no, but I was in high school for a while. And then they'd hang up, and then I have to call somebody else and reevaluate my strategy.
Okay, let's talk about that other thing you just said of being a narc in high school. Tell me more about that.
Did I ever tell this story?
No.
I worked for the city council in New York for a while, and when I was in my summer job for a couple of years, I actually would buy like cigarettes and alcohol and other things as like a 15, 16-year-old kid on hidden camera, because they were doing investigations into bodegas that were like selling things to kids illegally. So there's video of me somewhere from a pinhole camera in a little bodega somewhere in like Queens or Brooklyn buying like a thing of beer. Those were my.
Did you drink the beer? Did they let you drink?
No, I would have to give it to the investigator, and they would tag it, and then they would process it. And yeah, those were my younger authoritarian days.
Wow.
A part of a sting?
No, here's the thing. There was no sting. They would just kind of write a strongly worded report at the end of it. That's how that always happened. Yeah.
So there wasn't even like any fallout from this. It was just like,
no, hey,
stop.
You don't do that.
Don't.
Yeah, it was a weird summer. It was a weird summer.
Well, here's our final story for today, and it's actually a really nice one. It's not like a weird thing. It's a really beautiful thing. The headline for this one is, they're used to guarding the exhibits at Baltimore's Museum of Arts. Now they've curated one. So it's a story of 17 security guards serving as guest curators for a new exhibit in the Baltimore Museum of Art, because they're, the guards are the ones who spend the most time with all of this art. And so they develop all of these really beautiful relationships with these different artworks, which is really cool. So he says the guards stepped closer for a second look at some of their pieces, then a third time. Soon they were stationing themselves near objects where they were assigned in different galleries. The more I engage with a work of art, the more times I bump into it, the more I like it, said one of the security guards. But that's true of any relationship. You can't just spend 5 minutes with someone and think that you know them.
Huh.
Which is really cool. Like, so these guys, these guys and gals are spending time with all of these different art pieces, and more, they develop these really lovely and inspiring relationships with these different pieces of art, now to the point where they are curating an exhibit themselves. I don't know. That's
very cool.
I feel like there's some sort of question of humanity here. What does this say about the human experience? What is this? I don't know. There's liturgical questions to this in my mind, almost.
Yeah.
That
they're being formed by their continued sort of entering into and engaging with these pieces of art. It's changing them. It's opening up something in them.
Yeah, I feel like there's a sermon illustration here. Something,
I agree.
All right, Erin, give us the sermon.
No, save it. You could actually do it. Save it. It could work great.
No, don't.
Yeah, that would be so good. I want someone to hear it. If I say it, no one will hear it. You should do it.
Well, when you write your mystical pizza book, you can footnote the sermon that Steve will give and post on YouTube.
Maybe the pizza place will be next to an art gallery. You never know.
Yes, formed by pizza
celebrate
and by art.
Mm-hmm.
To celebrate the publication of that book, we will each buy a pie of pizza from Empire Pizza and just house it. Just house it.
Yes.
I'm gonna eat the whole thing.
Give me that.
Well, this has been News from Meg, everybody. Thank you for playing along.
Thank you to Meg, wherever she is, for sending these news pieces on to us. I still have no idea who Meg is.
She's real.
She goes to a different school.
I sort of feel like she lives in Canada. I sort of feel like if you have to say someone's real, then chances are they're probably not.
I agree, except a lot of people think my husband's fake, and so I have to tell them that he's real. But you've both met him, so that works.
Mm-hmm.
Witnesses.
I travel without him all the time for work and involved in large communities of people that I've known for a long time. And so I continuously have to say that he's real.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
He exists, I promise.
They don't just pay an actor to stand with me.
Good. That's good to know.
Just being honest. for some reason. I don't know why, but I am. Okay.
Yeah. Well, shall we get to our conversation for the day?
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about Pixar's newest movie, Turning Red. Steve, why don't you give us a summary of ye old Pixarian installation of the latest?
I would love to give a picture of this Disney-ish, Pixarian, I don't know what the adjective is, but before we do, I should note that this is a very current movie that's out there. I think it's only been out there for a few weeks now, so it's very newish. People who might not have had a chance to see this movie should beware. So I'm going to invite you, dear Christian, to unleash the spoiler porg and warn people that we're moving into potential spoiler porg territory.
Here is the porg.
Okay. We're through the curtain.
Let the spoilers let them flow.
like marinara sauce onto thin dough. Anyway, so Turning Red. Turning Red is about a girl named May, who's a very motivated Chinese Canadian girl living in Toronto. She kind of reminds me a lot of me at that age, just always doing her homework, really trying to impress her parents. She's very close with her mom, in particular Ming, and she really does all that she could do to make her proud. They're very close, but there's also that sort of strain of attention that she feels like anything less than A+ is not good enough for her mom. But they also have a really rich family history. The family takes care of an old temple in the Toronto area dedicated to one of their ancestors, Sun Yi. It turns out that May and her mom and all the other women of the family have inherited something kind of interesting from Sun Yi, a blessing at the time, but something that has become, as they say, an inconvenience. In the new country, all of the women, when they sort of reach a certain age, develop the ability to turn into red pandas, which made a lot of sense back in the old days when you were fighting, invading a marauding armies. But when you're a 13-year-old girl in a Toronto school, like, not so much. So all of the women in the family have undergone this ritual to sort of get the panda out of them. And May has to figure out, does she want to like live with this panda? Does she not? She ends up making this choice to keep the panda, to keep it within her. She's the one woman in her family to do so. And in doing so, she kind of resolves a lot of tensions with her mom, learns a little bit about herself, and understands that, or she makes the choice that instead of suppressing some of these very strong emotions, because the panda really comes out when she feels things very deeply and very strongly, instead of suppressing these emotions, she chooses to understand with them and live with them and try to kind of control them or master them to the extent that she could, rather than run from them. So she, at the end of the movie, still sort of has the ability to be a red panda. And it became a really wonderful tourist thing for their temple, actually, too. That's basically it. Did I leave anything important out?
No, you nailed it, as you do, Steve nailed it. So, Erin, I would love to know, just from you, how did you like this movie? What were your reactions to it?
Well, I thought it was so fun, and I actually thought of you, Christian, because one of the first things I learned about you is that you really love red pandas. So I was like, I can't believe it.
I do. I love them so
I
much.
can't believe I got invited to Pop Culture Coffee Hour to talk with Christian about a movie with red pandas.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing. But I thought it was so great. And I had, maybe Steve said that he related to May's character. I totally felt that as both the achiever side and just like the time warp was very much to my time growing up, like the Tamagotchi thing. I had one of those. It died all the time because I forgot to take care of it, and it made noises, and it was very annoying. And like, just from like the boy band, the ethnic culture, the hormones, even like the little Easter egg of like the tiny finger skateboard, like in the classroom. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I had a friend who had one of those skateboards and was just like literally like skateboard over his textbooks.
Yeah, dude.
In class. Tech Dex. Yeah, exactly. If my friend David ever hears this, just know that he needs to know I thought of him. But I just thought it was so fun, and the red panda element was like obviously so cute, and I loved when the character's eyes got like, oh, she's so cute. Like, that's how I feel when I see cute animals. So I just thought it was a lot of fun. It was a great movie.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really enjoyed watching it as well. I watched it with my family. We do family movie nights or whatever on Fridays whenever we can. And I'm always eager for the new Pixar stuff. And this one, I really was fascinated by it because it definitely felt a little different stylistically. Even with something like the big shiny eyes and stuff like that. But it held everything on it. Like, it held everything still that makes these kinds of movies like notably Pixar, right? I thought, again, this was kind of I was relieved actually to watch this Pixar movie, because I feel like the Pixar movies of late have just kind of been like bland, a little bit bland, not nearly as, inviting into some of, I think, deeper questions and conversations, like, movies like Toy Story or WALL-E, like they kind of hit hard. So I was happy to see Pixar exploring something instead of just trying to give, a feel-good story. And I was actually really happy to watch a movie with what I thought was like a very solidly female-led narrative, instead of Brave, which I remember when I watched that, I was just like, man, this isn't the movie that Merida deserved. I wanted so much better for her, but I thought this was exactly the right movie for Mei. And yeah, I thought it was great. Hey, Steve.
Hey, I too enjoyed it. I like this movie a lot. I think the themes that it was getting into are really important ones, like themes about growing up, right, and identity, and pushing back against your parents, and what it means to sort of like feel that you're not good enough, which is a temptation that Lord knows I had when I was at that age, like that sort of achiever stuff that Erin was talking about. I will confess at the beginning, and maybe this is because I've kind of like heard some sort of chatterings out there on the interwebs, like I thought that this whole thing is supposed to be like an extended allegory for sort of May's like physical changes growing up, but then the panda comes and it turns out to be a lot more than that. So I was like, wait a minute, but people on the internet were complaining that it's this. And then it turns out to be so much more. And then when I kind of like accepted the movie for what it was, I really enjoyed it. I just kind of like let some of those preconceived notions that I had kind of go away. And it was really powerful. If anything, I think I got more invested in the film as I watched it. That moment at the end in particular, where May is in the sort of bamboo grove and she encounters her young mom, and she has this sort of like really cathartic moment seeing her mom as a child with her own insecurities and bringing up the pain that she caused her mother, right? Like we kind of assume, I guess, the gash on her eye potentially, right, came from that sort of exchange. Like that just felt like these like very sweet and vulnerable and like just really powerful moments of family and identity and all of these pressures that May was feeling during the course of her life. But she kind of like came to know her mom in a different way. So yeah, I thought it was very sweet and very well done, and very silly, and yeah, a little bit of a blast from the past, which was kind of fun. So I dug it. I really dug it.
Yeah, I think you hit a really good and important point there about the red panda and the metaphor that it really presents, right? I think it would have been easy to see it just as like this physical change, but it really is a deep kind of total change, right? Something is really important that's going on for me throughout the course of this. So yeah, I guess let's get to it then. I mean, obviously, the first thing I think that we can talk about and get into is that this is clearly a coming of age story, and this is a time-honored tradition of the coming of age story. And I even came across an article in the Atlantic that said that there have been these other coming of age stories, but they're usually not super intended for young audiences. They're often, R-rated and kind of show some of the darker and harder parts of coming of age, and explore them in kind of graphic ways. Like I'm thinking of like Superbad, for instance, right? Which is a movie for dudes and just in full of, like just tons of swearing and sexual innuendo and outuendo. It's not even implied. Sometimes it's just like very sad. Yes. The article also then of course mentions like 8th grade and 13, which is I haven't seen 8th grade. I've heard it's fantastic. 13 I can't recommend because it's horrifying.
I think Christina and Emma did an episode of 13 when it came out a couple of years ago.
8th grade. They did 8th grade.
8th grade. Sorry, 8th grade.
They didn't do 13. Yeah. Do not go watch 13.
Yeah. Is that a bad one? Is that just like a lot? I don't know what that movie is.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
I thought of like Booksmart too. Did you guys see Booksmart?
Yeah.
Very super baddie.
Yeah, but yes. On the girl side, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no doubt then here that they're coming into like a different kind of coming of age story, and I thought it was beautiful. It worked really well, right? There's no doubt that the red panda is a metaphor for puberty in its whole sense, right? Not just like the physical changes, although those are there. She's stinky, she's getting hair all over the place, but there's also the emotional component of it, where like she's on edge, and like everything kind of is just like, whoa, like that seems like a really big response to something that I don't really understand what's going on. But I guess one of the reasons that I was excited, Erin, to have you on is because it felt like it would be like a silly thing for two dudes just to talk about like a female coming of age story. Even though I think there are definitely some universals and big things we can talk about. But I'm just wondering, from your perspective, like as you're watching this as a woman, were there certain notes that this really hit well, or are there ones that it failed to hit? Like, did you feel like it really captured the complexity of coming of age as a young woman?
Yeah, I mean, I think as much as any animated movie can do so, I thought that they did a great job. And actually, more than just like May's achiever side of things, I really related with how they depicted her like processing all of these things that were happening to her. Like, I was a tomboy growing up, so I was never really like into like girly things, and but I also super wanted to be like up on trends, and I wanted to dress like cool like everybody else. And I remember specifically that I never liked any real life boys, but I definitely liked boy bands. So in the movie, when May was like, her friends are obsessed with the store clerk, and she was like, I just don't get it, but she was very clearly infatuated with the band. I was like, that's real. Like, I loved the Backstreet Boys, and Brian Luttrell was like the end all be all of like the male species. Like, that was it. But I just remember like this crazy, frustrating, confusing feeling when I like thought that I might like a real life boy, like someone that I actually knew, because it changed every interaction with them moving forward. Like, you used to just go to school, be around them, everything was normal. But then it was like, oh my gosh, I kind of like him. Why did I say that? It was so dumb. Everything's the worst. Like, you just start like analyzing things that were never a big deal before, but all of a sudden they become a big deal, and you don't even know why. Like, it's just awful. So she has this like little notebook, and she's like, I'm drawing. I don't know why I'm drawing. Why am I drawing? Why did you do that? Oh, you're so stupid. Like, there's that just like snowball of feelings that you're like, I don't want to feel this. I don't want this to happen. And it just keeps going and going and going. So I thought they did like a really great job of depicting that, honestly. And then the other thing was that the whole like everybody knows feeling. I don't know if boys go through that, but like for girls, obviously there's like very significant things that happen during puberty, and it was like everybody knows, like everybody's gonna know. And then her mom's outside waving, feminine products around, that doesn't help. But even like the thoughts in her head, everybody knows that I drew this. Everybody knows that I feel this. Everybody knows that this is happening to me, this panda thing. So that was very super relatable, because I remember going to great lengths to hide, disguise, like push away any hint of anybody knowing the things that were happening, like to or within me. But if there was anything they kind of missed, it's that like everybody knows about puberty. Well, most people know about puberty going into it, but they didn't really hit on that it happens at different times for everybody. Like, it happens to everybody, but not at the same time. And that was a big thing within my friend group, because I mean, like, I played sports and things, like, so the timing was different for all of us. And that was hard, like, as friends, to like not do, we've done everything together. You change grades together, you do these, like later we would drive at the same time, but that was kind of a weird element to our friendship that, I don't know, it could have been kind of cool to hit on it, but you can't cover it all. So
yeah, that's
interesting. The challenges become that much more sort of isolating, because like it's just you that this is happening to, right? And that sense of like the whole world is watching just me, not like all of us.
Yeah. And there's like a weird like race, like it's like a race, like, or am I behind, or am I weird, or am I ahead? Am I weird? Like you're not synced up timing wise with anybody. And so everything feels very like just you, like exactly, just super isolating.
You never know when the panda is going to come for you. Like, it's coming, but you don't know when or who's going to get the panda first, or like any of that. That makes total sense. I can definitely imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, PE class was a wild time in middle school. Let me just tell you, the locker room was a weird place. So. But I thought that really like they did a great job of incorporating it without, as Steve pointed out, when I read all the articles too before I watched the movie, people kind of made it sound like that was exactly what the movie was about, like the whole theme of it. And it's just really not. Like, it's as much about those feelings and emotions that I was talking about, like liking a real life boy or not knowing what to do with all these things that are emotions that are bubbling up, as much as it is about like legit physical things that happen to you.
Yeah. Because there was like a weird bit of discomfort that was out there, or pushback that somehow some of the stuff that I remember seeing online that like this is inappropriate or this is whatever. But no, I mean, like you actually get into it and like, A, what's inappropriate about this, and two, like it's this larger story of discomfort and belonging and identity and change and just very baseline human things. Yeah, family trauma, right? And how it gets inherited and passed down. I mean, like all sorts of real stuff that was, I think, executed very well. So I don't know where even that online narrative sort of came from, but who knows where any online narratives come from?
Because there was one mention of her having a body is why. That's why. That's what happened. We don't want to talk about bodies. They're something to ignore.
They're so gross and nobody has them. So.
Yeah. Yes. So one thing in particular that I thought was, that's really worth holding on to is kind of, moving beyond, like, I think the more, even some of the physical stuff, which I think is equally important to how all of the stuff happens in our fields. But I really loved how the movie dealt with emotions and the expression of emotions. And, I'm going back to like the big kind of like anime style of like the big eyes, right? Like and really it's only the girls who respond this way. Like none of the adults have these moments of overwhelming emotion in this particular way, which, again, I think there's something that's uniquely interesting about how we experience emotions as young people, where everything seems like it's, intensely felt, and it's everything kind of all the time. You never really know when something is gonna, pop out of you in some way. Like it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, I see this, I don't have any kids, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews and godchildren, and it's just funny to me, like, growing up with them now over the last few years, seeing how there's like the one kid that like never walks anywhere, but just like sprints everywhere, right? Like there's just this heightened level of intensity, right? That like with children and adolescents. And I don't know developmentally if it's just because like it's all new, right? And it's part of the sort of like growing process of like, this is the first time I've ever seen a tree before. Wow, this is the first time that I've ever, right? Like I remember one time I live in an apartment building, and my niece came over and visited, and she was like looking out the window, and she was like, she had never been this high up, even though that we're not very high up. And it was this like the first time she's ever looked out of like a building higher than a second story. It's like these things that we sort of take for granted, right? Like experiences and emotions and stuff, which like at one point in your life are very new and very exciting and like have to be dealt with, right? Maybe we're just all jaded as adults because we've done it before for so long. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that's a really interesting perspective on it. Like, I mean, I'm thinking now that this is probably in some ways why we need to be able to have the eyes of one another, right? To see things through another's perspective, which can, illuminate and open some things for us. We were just in Wisconsin this last weekend, and it snowed on the Saturday that we were there. And, here I am, a Phoenix boy. I mean, it's going to be 93 today, 93. And then tomorrow is going to be 95. And then the day after that's going to be 97. And then the day after that's going to be 98. And then the day after that's going to be 93. And the day after that's going to be 93. And then it's going to be 68. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see. Also,
did you memorize the forecast for the next week? That was strangely... Good.
Well, it's more like it just gets etched into my soul because with every 90-degree day, I feel a part of me die. And, it's like I have to just wait on the resurrection. So I guess that's good.
How long, oh Lord?
Oh, here we go. Anyway, so I think like it was interesting because I was so excited about the snow, and I was like at one point it was just going like, you guys, it's snowing, and like everyone from Wisconsin was like, it's snowing, and I was just like, you don't understand, like this is amazing. And then there's all talks of like how all of creation can be sacramental if we let it, right? And at a certain point someone said, like you're right, like we're so used to it, but when I see it with your eyes, it's so beautiful. I'm able to like look at this, like I see what you see, and that to me is like that, like that's cool. That's a really cool way of thinking about stuff. Like if we can learn to see things through the eyes of one another, then it might actually open us up in a new way. And I wonder, like, is there something in particular the way that adolescents and other young people, their brains are going through so many like outrageous changes. Is there something that the unique power of the adolescent mind has to offer for our experience in the church? I mean, I feel like we tend to treat the adolescent mind as something dangerous that needs to be tamed. but I wonder if there's some unique gifts that it has to offer the rest of the body.
Yeah. A thing that's coming up for me as like a potential point of contrast, have either of you read or watched Children of Men? So it's a really good book. It's on my shelf here, written by P.D. James, that they turned into a movie.
I'm not allowed to watch R-rated movies.
It's a good movie though.
My mom won't let me.
So the premise of Children of Men is that like what happens to the world when people can't conceive, and like there's this like last boy that is born, right? And like all of society just sort of like slowly ages, and there's no new people that are born. And this happens like, I think the youngest person on earth is like in their 20s at this point. So like there's been no new human babies that have been born for over 2 decades. And you see the way that it sort of like coarsens society, because like everybody just sort of develops this like fatalism. There's this sense of like, we're all going to die. And there's no sense of newness and renewal. Like this heaviness that sort of like begins to settle over people, because they know that all of these buildings that they've built and this music that has been written over the eons, like at some point there's going to be the last person to listen to any of this, and then the earth is going to go silent. So it's interesting that there is something about like maybe a word that I would use to sort of like describe maybe that feeling of, especially off of like your experience of seeing that snow, right? That like a child's eyes sometimes kind of approach the world with like a sense of gratitude that others of us don't, right? Like we kind of take things for granted, like, oh, whatever, it's snowing again, or oh, whatever, like it's a beautiful 70-degree day again, or whatever it is, as opposed to somebody that like, tastes a lollipop for the first time, or sort of sees a sunrise for the first time. Like there's that, you go nose blind to life after a while, and kids aren't quite nose blind yet. And maybe they're just like the richness and the rawness and the realness of their experience is like, okay, maybe there's more to be grateful about than we fuddy-duddies sometimes let on about.
Yeah, because we aren't devoid of those experiences or opportunities for those experiences as adults. Like we kind of think that like puberty and hormones and feelings are things that we grow out of, but we really just keep having feelings, and we learn how to like manage them or what to do with them that makes them like healthy and not make us, hurt other people or yell or whatever. So
or how's a giant pizza,
or do that, right? That's my clearly come a long way in my coping mechanism. So
it used to be 2 pizzas,
and now look at me, down to 1. Yeah,
I'm really proud of you.
I'm down to 2 pies a day.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. Our lives are different. We do grow and we do change, but the opportunities and the like, they're there for that newness, that excitement.
So here's a question, Erin, because I mean, I think like out of the 3 of us, you probably have the most consistent and direct experience engaging with young people, because Steve and I just talk about it, which is, I'm now realizing the meaninglessness of my work. It's fun.
You're doing good work. You are.
Thanks. I'm gonna order a pizza real quick. But my question for you is like in your, like your experience then, because I'm wondering, and maybe I'm doing a bad job of framing this question, but like, is there something about that, the kind of the raw experience of feelings and the bigness of them, and the, young people are like, there's nothing off limits in their minds, right? Like for questioning or anything like that. And we kind of say, no, this is how we do it. This is how we do it. And they're the ones who say things like, why, like, why do we have to do that this way? And like, well, we're going to build a bell tower for the church, but like, why? It's going to cost millions of dollars. Why can't we do something different? Like give that money to people who don't have houses or something. And they're like, well, because this is what we do. And God wants us to have a bell tower. And then they ask like, well, why? And you say, because God says so. And then they say, but why does he say that? It's like, well, because reasons. And they're like, oh, okay, reasons. And somehow that question gets lost, like it gets either shut up or there's no room for it or something. So I guess what I'm wondering Like, is there something that we as people who have gone nose blind, like uniquely stand to inherit from young people? Like, is there something not just, not, I don't know, like, is there something that should be opened in us, reimagined, reawakened? I don't know. Like, have you had any experience of that happening to you based on the kind of, emotional life or prophetic insight of a kid? Am I making any sense?
Yeah. Wait, I mean, you just asked me like 12 questions.
I do that. I'm sorry. I have a lot of questions.
Yes, the answer is yes to all the questions. I think, yes, we have some sort of awakening to learn from young people. Yes, I think that they can see things that we don't see. I will also say, yes, it's good to have answers for their why, just maybe not the ones that you said. Like, it's fine to have our why challenged. I don't know why we have this unique like reaction to the why. We're like ready to like, because, it's such a great opportunity for us to reflect on the why and think about it. And we have some sort of aversion to that as adults. Like, it makes us like less adult or shaky or something, which I think is something that young people pick up on. Like, if we're not willing to consider why, we're like, because I said so. Like, what an awful answer. I hated that answer when I was a kid. Now, is it sometimes valid, like especially in parenting scenarios? Yeah, I get it, but not for some of these bigger questions that are being asked. We got the opportunity to actually be in person with young people for the first time in a while at the village at the end of March, beginning of March. I don't know. We sometime recently. It was, the very beginning of March. And it was just awesome because they did have some really great why questions that had really great why answers that helped make sense. And then there was a few things they're like, we did that and I don't know why we did that. And I honestly said in front of a group of kids, I was like, that's valid. I have no idea why we did that. Like, I don't know. I have no idea. Thank you for saying that because I don't want to do that ever again. It was really not worth it. And so it's just, I think it's such a great part of the feedback loop to ask questions that we think we already have the answers to, and just to see how our answers land now, right? It doesn't mean that the church is changing or we're doing something like in a bad way. It means we're reevaluating how like our ministry needs and how people are processing them. And it's like the best part about working with young people, to be honest. It's the best part. Yeah. And they help us reframe, and it's really great. I mean, like I don't mean to be prideful, but in a way to help them reframe like the things that they're thinking about too. Like, that's a great opportunity, and it's what makes the stuff worth being stuff.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think you're bringing up a really important dynamic to this, right? That it's both and. It's not this kind of like unilateral movement of us forming them, or like, hey, let's let's hand over the keys to the church to the young people and let them drive where it goes. But it's both, right? I think a lot of people have pushed back against the idea of like kids being the future of the church, and I don't feel like it's anywhere in the realm of kind of a unique perspective to say youth are not the future of the church. Youth are the church. They are the church. We are the church. So let's all be the church. And just as every, as the body has the many members that do different things, like, let's let young people do their thing, which I think is to be like, but why? Why are we doing this? And really going, okay, let's take that question seriously. Not let's, open up a can of answers and drop them on their head. But I think you hit the nail on the head by saying it makes us shaky. Like, the questions frighten us, and they frightened us then. We just learned to shut them up. Go ahead.
Yeah, which I think actually is a sign of our lack of maturity when we respond in that sort of way, right? Because I think that one of the things that kids need is some level of like black and white and some level of just sort of like clarity, right? Because especially like early on in your development, like there's no room for ambiguity when you're like 3 or 4 yes. or 5, right?
Yeah,
like as
children.
You mature. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Literal
like
children.
This is good.
Yes.
This is bad. Like, don't put your finger in the socket, like very clear, like, because I said so. Right. But as you grow up,
that's ever a gray area though, the light socket thing. Like I'm pretty sure like that's just an always. Like
that's fair.
And there's some gray area about putting your finger in light sockets as you get older. You know, wait till you're older, kid. Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about it. But like as we get older though, and we understand some of the complexity of the world, right? We understand that there are areas like there are gray areas sort of between the sort of clear black and white. I think that sometimes maybe our own unresolved sort of adolescent insecurity is behind the like, I don't want to engage with these questions. I kind of want sort of a clear sort of like pat answer. Like it takes a level of like vulnerability and courage and sort of self-possession to be able to, I think as an adult, receive a tough question with a sense of like, okay, this is not going to shake the foundation upon which we're standing. It's a good faith question that is going to open up like conversation and potentially lead to even sort of like deeper trust and so forth. Like not change, right, in this kind of like scary sense, but re-articulation, right, clarification. But when we are ourselves like the scared little child that is still like within May's mom, right, as she goes older, like these unresolved wounds, I think that's where sometimes like our superficial like no comes from, because we're still like, we feel like we're kids hearing these questions, as opposed to the confidence and self-possession to be adults, to be like, okay, I can hang with this question for a while. It's not a threat, right? It's coming from a good place, because like some faithful kid who's here and wants to be here is asking a good faith question, and we're going to deal with it together, as opposed to like, it's going to make me feel safe if I shut him down real quick and say no. Right. That's like our inner problem that hasn't been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention our like pride of just wanting to be right or have an answer. Right. You know, like, oh, you're coming to me as an authority. I have this opportunity to give this like authoritative response. And you know, I mean, like that's just a confession from me. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. So when I don't know the answer to a question, the temptation is to pretend to know the answer to the question, where really the most needful and helpful thing is to like be willing to grapple with it alongside someone and seek a good answer together, even if the answer is not coming from me, right? Like that's a really helpful process. And that's the change that's needed, because that change is growth. Like we're so fearful of change, but like growth is change. It's just good change. That's what we're like shooting for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what then, you know, like, I mean, I guess what I wonder about then is, you know, I think we're probably all in agreement that it does seem like there's something that we're missing, right, in keeping young people sidelined. And I think probably it is because, you know, to the point, like it brings up kind of like the bigger, you know, the immaturities of our own. Like one of the big controversy, right, one of the big controversies in this movie was the moment when May as a red panda sees her crush and goes "Awooga" and thumps her foot, right? Which is, you know, very much a clear reference to Thumper in Bambi. And by the way, y'all, if you have not seen the Bambi Twitterpation scene with Thumper, that stuff's like X-rated compared to what happened in Turning Red. I mean, I went back and watched it, and I was uncomfortable. Like I felt uncomfortable watching it, and I was like, do I need to confess this? I'm not sure. I don't know what to do here, but it's bad. So I guess what I wonder is like how not only what are we missing out on by bringing them or by keeping them sidelined, but what are they missing out on that is also going to get passed on, right? Like it's these big raw experiences that we often just with the answers that we have try to quiet them down, stuff them down, shut them up, because they do make us uncomfortable and scared. Like we have our own lustiness that we never learned how to deal with, right? And so we don't want to see a red panda be lusty and have a really big, overwhelming feeling, which, by the way, she doesn't want. She doesn't want to have those feelings. And I guess like I don't like how are we failing? Are we failing them? Are we failing young people? Are we failing young people? Do you feel like we're failing young people, guys?
Big picture, yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's some grace like on both sides of that, in that I don't necessarily think that prior generations were like super awesomer at it than we are being. Like it's kind of
so it's our parents' fault is what you're saying.
No, please, mom, no, it's not your fault. But I just think it's easy to look at things and see how much better they could be and how much more healthy and like that's a very great feeling, like it's a great process to think through, but we can't think that we're unique in our awfulness of the situation either, right? I mean, so maybe that's just what I tell myself so I can sleep at night. But do we need to be constantly reevaluating how we could do better for young people? Yes. Is that because we aren't doing as good as we can? Yes. I think that's how I would frame it, but I majored in PR, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a fair point, right? Like this is something that not just like Orthodox Christians in the United States need to wrestle with, but I think just kind of like Christians in the United States and Christians around the world, to be totally honest, like writ large, need to struggle with. Like I've been poking through some interesting new data recently, which actually kind of like brings some of this out in terms of some of these like big picture trends. Like there's this group called the Springtide Research Institute, and they do kind of annual reports on the state of religion and young people. So they have one for 2021, which they just published recently. And I think some of their findings, right, because what their 2021 data really kind of focuses on is themes of uncertainty, right? Which are kind of some of the stuff that like, how do we as leaders in the church, the grownups in the room, respond to some of the uncertainty that young people are kind of bringing to the table, these heartfelt questions and I don't know, and so forth. You get some really interesting data, like 55% of the Gen Zers that they interviewed, like 13 to 25, I think was their range in the survey, said, I don't feel like I can be my full self in a religious organization, right? So there's something about the way that we are kind of receiving or not receiving some of the things that young people are bringing to the table kind of makes them feel that there are parts of me that needs to be reserved and held back, right? There's like the panda needs to be sort of like confined somewhere else as opposed to the panda can be in the room with everybody else. Or 47% say, I don't think religion, faith, or religious leaders will care about the things I want to talk about or bring up during times of uncertainty, because people have these questions and the adults in the room are like, nope, keep your mouth shut, right? So there's all these kinds of like big picture trends in like just, ministry in the United States, Christianity at large, not just us, not just anybody in particular, where young people are feeling this sense of the uncertainty, the doubts, the questions, the things that I'm wrestling with, maybe even parts of me are not welcome at the table because it becomes kind of this scary, destabilizing force for the adults in the room who want the easy answers in the order. But the question for a lot of those young people is like, they're going to have to deal with that somewhere, right? Those questions don't simply go away because we don't want to address them. Those complicated parts and feelings of uncertainty don't go away just because we don't want to address them. Like they're going to percolate somewhere. When we don't make room for it in the church, all we sort of really do is ensure that they're not going to be addressed here. They're just going to be addressed somewhere else.
And what is it with our unwillingness to remember that like we were that like not that long ago? I mean, we like the three of us are not that old, right? And in the movie, we're not that old, but like we were, these young people that we're talking about like just 5 minutes ago. And in the movie, it was so frustrating to be like, the mom should have just told her, like she had a panda. Like this like whole experience would be so different if they went through it knowing like, okay, this happened to you, you did this is whatever. Now, maybe the outcome would be different. Maybe her panda would have been in like some sort of piece of jewelry at the end, but still like why hiding and denying the experiences that we had as young people, it's not really that helpful to current young people. Like they feel alone in what they're questioning and what they're struggling. And they're not the first person to question or struggle. And it's because no adults are saying like, I felt like that. I wondered that, right? Like, yeah. I still wonder that. There's in our survey that we did, some kid was writing like, I just feel so bad. And never all the way focused in church. Like, I know the icons are there to help me, but they just aren't enough. And I was like, I know, tell me about it. Like, I feel that all the time. And I just wanted to like reach through the computer and like hug this child and be like, me too, Yeah. I think we deprive like the shared experience we were speaking to earlier, like we deprive one another of that when we forget to be like, I got a panda, like it's wild, it hurt my mom, my panda hurt my mom, like it's like that's what a crazy thing that could have changed the whole narrative and can change like narratives.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, right? That like mom could have done that, but she also couldn't because she was not integrated with her panda. She had banished her panda. So she's like, we don't talk about the panda. So I can't talk about my panda. I'm not going to talk about your panda. Like, in order to talk about your panda, I have to talk about my panda. Right. And I am not prepared to talk about my panda. I never learned to talk about my panda. All I learned to do was lock it in a piece of jewelry, and run away from it. So I think you're dead on in saying like, if we could somehow actually talk to people about these things from the perspective of a shared experience, then that'd be great. However, most of our experiences are not integrated into who we are. We're ashamed of them. We've split from them. We try to pretend that, we don't have doubts. We try to pretend that we don't have fears. We try to pretend that we know all the answers. So when some kid comes along and doesn't know the answers, we're like, whoa, we don't know what to do. Or when some kid comes along and asks a question why that we've been, throughout our own lives had to learn to shut up, then we don't know what to do with it because we don't have any practice. We don't have any practice dealing with these things. We have our own shame that we're battling. And I think this is, another one of the really interesting points that the movie gets to is just this question of generational sin, right? Of how our own, and I know like I'm screwing my kids up. I know I'm going to just come out and say it. Like my kids are screwed up and it's all my fault. And because it was all my mom's fault and it was all her mom's fault and it was all, you know what I mean? On and on and on and on, that like you don't learn how to talk about something until you learn how to talk about something. And usually you can't talk about something unless somebody else has learned how to talk about that thing that needs help being talked about. It's why in Encanto, they don't talk about Bruno because no one has learned to talk about Bruno, but we need to talk about Bruno. We need to talk about the panda. We need to talk about the thing that happened so that we can talk about the things that are happening.
Yeah. And in this context, right, in this ministry context, like it's kind of on us and as the grownups in the room to be the ones to like understand our own sort of experiences, right? Like it's unfair to sort of like expect a 12-year-old kid to sort of do the work and kind of like have a inner sort of articulated sense and be the one to broach some of these conversations, right? Like this is the work that we need to do as the grownups in the room to sort of create this space for the young people to be able to then like have that conversation, right? Like we have to take that first step. Like we can't expect them to take that first step or do that work. 12-year-old comes to us and like, well, I spent the last 2 years in therapy and I'm finally ready to be in youth group. It's like, no, like, you know what I mean?
You're 12-year-old, figure your stuff out and then you can come hang out with us. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is, this is why that moment, right, where May gets some like actual compassion, right? I mean, her friends are with her and they love her and they care about her, and there's like this deep attachment that she has, which I think we could also talk about, like the role of friendships and the kind of increasing social circles in adolescence. But we're on kind of on this generational topic right now, so I'm going to keep going with that. But there's this thing that we do, at least that I can even speak to as a parent, that, when your kids start showing you your own badness, right? Like I'm saying badness in quotes there, right? We almost want to, like, we can't make space for it when, we have parts of us or whatever that are angry or resentful or entitled, and we've been told kind of internally and externally that those are bad parts of us that we need to shut up. We want to squash it out of them instead of actually engaging with whatever that thing is. So the moment that there's actual compassion in this movie is that moment when the dad finds that the panda is not just a bad thing, right? The panda is also this really fun and like wonderful and like playful, beautiful part of her that also is capable of doing some really harmful things. And I love when he just sits down, and I can't exactly remember exactly what he says, but there is kind of this like encouragement, like maybe you don't have to get rid of the panda.
Yeah.
Maybe you can redeem it. Maybe the panda can be redeemed and accepted.
The one time he sees the panda at work in his wife, right, is when she came to his defense. Because when May's mom was a kid, right, like grandma didn't approve of dad when they were sort of like originally dating, and like the panda came out to sort of like defend dad and sort of defend this love. So like, you know, he sees the camcorder, he sees the friends having these kind of like fun interactions, and that sort of like percolates this memory. Like the one time that I saw the panda, it wasn't doing damage. It was this intense sort of like protective thing that's responsible for the marriage that sort of like came out of it and the family that came out of it. Of course, it can be scary because Lord knows when you see the mom's panda, like that thing did some major damage in the Toronto area and they've got to raise $100 million to like pay for the Superdome or whatever. Right. But it's capable of good.
Yeah. That scene with the dad was really great. It was like, I'm with you, Christian, like the compassion and the just acknowledgement, like that's where she learned the most about her mom's like panda was in that moment. And I thought it was a pivotal point of the movie for sure.
Yeah. And there again, it's like an adult taking that first step, right? The dad taking this first step, not the kid figuring it out for herself, but the dad being like, well, what if, right?
Yeah, because the dad actually had space for the panda in his heart, right? Like he didn't necessarily think that it needed to be banished. He saw it as this thing that actually proved mom's undying and unquestionable love for him, right? That like this, I don't know that the panda is a bad thing. Like it just, he had a different narrative, he had a different story, and how true is that often that like some of the parts of ourselves that we find to be the most unacceptable, like others look at and go like, oh, like really? Like you're ashamed of that, or you're like, that's, I don't know, like I don't see you that way. You know, we almost like people can have more compassion for us than we even have for ourselves. And in order to survive, and this is kind of, I think, what you end up seeing with, you know, grandma and the ants, is that they have to get rid of the panda again. You know, they don't know how to live with the panda anymore. They've split it from their consciousness so much that they have to kind of live falsely in the world instead of wholly. You know, they have to keep up a kind of appearance of some kind that really actually takes a lot more energy than, you know, healthily integrating these different parts of us. You know,
and those like those conversations are like, relationships are just so important, like the safety and security to say those things to people, to say, I don't like this about myself, or I'm worried about this about myself. And then to hear the response, oh, really? Like, I don't see that. Like that there's a lot right there, a lot of foundation that is required. There's one time when I was trying to fight with Joe. I just really needed to have an argument one day. And so I picked a fight because there was something specific that I knew we would disagree about, because I'm a good person. So I did that. And I was like, I was upset, and he could tell I was upset. And he was like, okay, I see why you feel that way. And I was like, but blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, I mean, like, I get why you say that. And I was like, but blah, 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 blah. And he like had these like very like even keeled, loving, like validating responses to everything I said. And then finally I said, why don't you fight with me? And he goes, I don't want to fight with you. And I said, but I'm being unreasonable. And he goes, I don't see you that way. And I was just like puddle on the floor. like, I mean, just those, when you said that, Christian, I was like, that's happened to me. I mean, I was saying, I literally shouted the words, I'm being unreasonable. And he's like, I don't see you that way, when I was being unreasonable, like in his face. Like, it's like the love that takes insecurity in our relationships make those like spaces possible. I don't know. It's a real thing. That's a real life panda story from my life, like from my marriage. And he was great. Like He was just so loving. I mean, I was frustrated as all get out, but I mean, like definitely heard what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So be like Joe. WWJD.
Oh, there you go. We're bringing it back, everybody. Get your bracelets ready.
Except I want mine to say WWDJD because
Dr. Joe.
Yeah, what would Dr. Joe do?
That's fair. That's fair.
Save lives. That's what he does.
Honestly. True
story.
So here's maybe kind of, I know we're getting to the end of our time, but I want to maybe like ask a question here, and it's this one that is about to come from my mouth.
Thanks, Purd.
What would it look like then, like for the church to be able to foster relationships like that, where we can show up unreasonably, and like I think it's friendships. I think it's like intergenerational relationships. I think there's questions of like what would pastoring look like, both kind of from the perspective of the spiritual father of a community, but also like as a youth worker. What would it look like to begin to foster some of these kinds of relationships? I mean, I think that there's definitely some element of like we need to do our own work here, right? Like we need to go find the parts of us that we're ashamed of and learn to actually engage and interact with them in the light of Christ, to know ourselves as fully loved, even when we're being unreasonable in our mind. Because he probably also looks at us and goes like, yeah, I mean, I don't see you that way. I don't think you are unreasonable. I'm not saying what you're doing is helping you, but I don't think it's unreasonable to do what you're doing. Like there's some reason you're doing what you're doing. But what would it look like for the church to really intentionally foster an environment or a culture where these kinds of relationships are possible, where we can show people our panda and not just get help with it, because I think that's how we tend to think about these things, like help me get rid of this panda, but understanding how the panda actually might be good.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of another piece of data, which I didn't read earlier. In that Springtide research, 54% of young people say that religious communities try to fix my problem instead of just being there for me. I wonder if that is a thing that we as Orthodox Christians are more susceptible to because of the way that we sort of have learned to translate orthodoxy and what it means. Right? Because like what does orthodoxy mean? There's kind of an ambiguity in the underlying Greek term. It can mean sort of like right worship, and it can mean sort of right belief. And I think as modern people, we sort of tend to gravitate more to like the right belief definition of it than the right sort of like posture, the right glory, the seeing the world in this liturgical sense, right? Seeing the kingdom as actually breaking through in this moment. And that I think affects us because like we're so wrapped up sometimes in being the ones who get it right, that things that might question that lead, I think, to a peculiar anxiety amongst us, because that somehow is like a challenge to our orthodoxy, right? Like that question, that feeling, that struggle, whatever it is. And it leads to us kind of banishing these things to the side, right? Or if you're going to struggle with this, you do it outside of the church rather than inside of the church, because we're kind of starting with this like overly simplified view of what the church is. I mean, like, because I think what we talked about this on the podcast before, like how Paul approaches things is like, it begins with this question of identity. Like, remember who we are, and things will sort of flow from that. I think we need to sort of have hard conversations with us. Like we're more than just the people who get it right. Right. We're the people who sort of like in our conduct, like reveal the reality of the kingdom being present in this world. We're not just the people who get it right. And if we can remember that, like maybe some of these questions don't have to inspire the same level of anxiety, because people who love as Christ loves can kind of like handle some of these questions. But if all we are is the people who get it right, then sure, I can see how there's no space there. Like, I don't know. That's maybe kind of like just like our stepping back a little bit. Like, who the heck are we? Are we something deeper than we have assumed ourselves to be? Am I making any sense?
Yeah. In fact, and I'll even say like, as identifying as the people who get it right. It's like, well, then you haven't read the scriptures, because like that is not the story of anyone.
Yeah.
Like we're actually the people who get it wrong, and that would be probably a way better posture to take in everything. Like chances are I'm wrong. Like if that was my starting place, I like to joke that the message of the gospel is you're wrong, now change. Because I mean, that's what Jesus basically comes into the world saying, right? Change how you think. Like you're like, and not just think, intellectually, but how you think spiritually, how you think emotionally, whatever. So yeah, I think you're right. If we can point to something beyond the level of being right, then that probably would be a good first step. Erin, what are your thoughts? How do you think that the church could be a place that fosters these, the kinds of relationships where you can show up in your unreasonable panda self?
I think, building off of what Steve said, if we abandon our pursuit of being correct and maybe make our first pursuit either recognizing that we're wrong, which is a great first pursuit, or second, just listening. Like I sound so simple, but if we were a better place for people to just be heard, we were all part of a conversation recently where we just acknowledged like listening is not necessarily like endorsing or but we're so afraid to do it because we want to chime in with but right. And so if we just listened more, I wonder what would happen. I really am not trying to give a cop-out answer because it's so simple, but when we listen to understand instead of respond, I think there's something really great that happens, and it allows some like relationship to be fostered, to make some space for some honesty for when maybe a but needs to come later, but for someone to just be heard. Like, that conversation that I had with Joe, we'll call it a conversation to be gracious, was like his answers weren't profound, but the way he listened to me was right. Like he didn't correct me with his words. He let me hear myself by just him hearing me. And then I knew everything I needed to know from that conversation, right? Like as a fully grown adult, I needed to hear myself scream at somebody. Like, so there, I don't know, there's just something so simple, but it seems like such a deep opportunity for a shift in environment and relationship. And I mean, it's not that hard. It's hard, but it's not that hard. I mean, of all the list of things like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this, like we need to listen more, shouldn't it be like the thing that's the most difficult to do? But
yeah,
that's
huge. I think that's really a important thing to bear in mind, that listening is such a simple activity, yet so difficult for us to do for any number of reasons. So thank you.
And questions get answered sometimes, like with just listening. You can answers still are available for questions. I'm not saying we don't answer questions. I'm just saying we answer them in a different demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe let them answer themselves, because that's a possibility.
Yeah, and maybe it's just okay to let questions linger. Like, yeah, that's the, we'll just, I don't know that I need to give you an answer today. Maybe we can just say, I don't know, together. Yeah, I don't know. Who wants some pizza?
Always.
Everyone has a thing they can eat the most of. I'm going to remember that.
What's yours? That was not fair. I really shared a lot.
That's really the purpose of this, is to bring you on, leave you emotionally exposed, and then send you back into the world.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Pop Culture Coffee Hour is gotcha journalism at its finest.
Yep, we hit hard. We hit hard and we hit quick. So let's maybe turn to our final topic here of the day, which is just, we close every episode of Pop Culture Coffee Hour with a segment we call God Sightings. God Sightings is simply a way of trying to continue to be everywhere, at all times, just looking for the presence of God, the action of God in our lives, because it's very easy to lock him in a box and to leave him in a building we often refer to as his house on Sundays, instead of realizing that this this God is loose and is not a tame lion. So that's what we do, just looking for God in our lives. So Steve, why don't you go ahead and tell us a place where you saw God?
Yeah. I think I saw God at work this past weekend in Milwaukee, actually, because like you said, Christian, we were in Wisconsin over the weekend doing a Be the Bee retreat. And, you lead the adult track, I led the youth track. And I was looking at some of the surveys, and just like again and again, like a lot the teens that were there were like, I just really felt very like loved and listened to and appreciated. And it was just really great to see that come across in the feedback that they offered. But I really I keep getting drawn to one particular moment during the weekend. One of the sessions that we do is like a little listening exercise, where we break up everybody into groups of 2 and just have them sort of practice listening with each other. And this one little sweet kid, I was asking them, like, what does it feel like to actually have somebody like across from you, looking you in the eye, listening to you? This one sweet kid raises his hand, and he's like, it doesn't happen all that often, because a lot of times I'll just be talking to people and they'll just like stop paying attention to me, and it's just very lonely on an ongoing basis. But it was really kind of nice to be here and feel like somebody cared enough about me to like listen to me while I shared whatever it is I had to share. And the question that I reflected back to him and everybody else in the room is like, what if this was normal though? Right? Because I think what we're appreciating here, this sense that like I am enough for somebody to like look at me and care about me and give me a little bit of their attention for a few moments, which apparently a lot of those kids like struggle with not having on an ongoing basis. Like, what if this was normal? Because I think that what we experienced, thank God, during the course of the day was a little taste of that kingdom, a little taste of the belonging and the unconditional love and the lack of fear and anxiety that inheres in the kingdom. So I think about what he said, and I think about what those teens said during the course of the weekend. Like, and what if that was more normal for all of us? That was my God sighting.
Yeah, I mean that's right on the money with what Erin was just saying. Yeah,
that's amazing and sad, but amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Am I next?
Yeah, Erin.
Okay.
Do your thing.
I think that my God sighting is a product of thinking about someone in my life that I lost not that long ago. And in reflecting on her life, and I had an opportunity to share some stories about her last week. I was thinking so much about all my stories are about how she was and the things that she did, even though she was very wise and said a lot of really great things, very memorable things. Everything that I've been thinking about and sharing with other people are things that she did and the way she was with her friends and with other people around her. Like, what an example just her demeanor and her way of being were. So I think it's God kind of giving me an opportunity to consider the fact that I get asked to share a lot of words and I really like words. They're great and safe and you can edit them. But I think that there's something to be said for the like act of being and the I don't know, I'm just feeling a little bit of a calling to consider that maybe more than not more. I mean, at least as much as I consider what I say, I should consider how I am and what I do. So that's good. I don't know if that counts. That
absolutely.
Works.
No, absolutely. Absolutely it does. That's really encouraging to me too, to think about, what is what I'm doing, saying, for lack of a better way of putting it, who I am, who I'm becoming. For me, the final, I think mine is probably more of like a, not necessarily like seeing God, but like looking for God is kind of maybe more how I'm feeling it. Like it's this anticipatory God sighting. Like I know the Lord is in the thing, but I don't quite know how or where. Does that make sense? So it's really been a pretty rough season of our life here. We've had a lot of like family and friends who've moved away from Phoenix. Just like in 1 week, we had like a family that we were very close to, and my brother-in-law and his wife, they moved out of Phoenix like in the same, like one day apart from one another. So we lost like 8 people that we really love. And then, you know, the last couple of years themselves have been really, really difficult. And there's been a lot of loss wrapped into that as well. And so I feel like in my life, there's just been a lot that has been stripped away, is sort of increasingly how it feels. Like there's just like, wow, like when is the loss going to stop is sort of how it feels. So it leads me wondering, what's God up to? Like God, I think I do believe he's up to something. I don't know exactly what it is. But I'm hoping that there's something in the works. But there's a lot of uncertainty, right now, kind of based around some of the losses and the different experiences that we've had. So I'm trying to like look back at my life and realize like, okay, he showed up for me there. He showed up for me there. He showed up for me there. Like, what is he doing now? Because when you're in the middle of it, it's just so hard to know. It's so hard to see. And all there is moments of panda, you know, panda moments, pandemonium.
There it is.
See what I did there? That's, do you get it though?
Yeah.
Could you explain it to me? Because I don't know if I do. Well, we'll see how it goes. God is good all the time. Whoa, my door just slammed shut. That was a very frightening moment. Glad to be where we're at right now with this. Anyway, Erin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yay!
Thank you guys. Erin. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Oh, what a blast. What a blast. We're grateful for your presence in our lives, as a friend, and now as a co-host on this here podcast.
The honor is mine in both cases.
Well,
I look forward to the next time we can all eat pizza together.
I'd like to too. I really can't believe I told an indefinite number of people that. It's fine. It's fine.
No, I'm pretty sure the amount of people is fairly definite. It rounds out at about 10, 11. Like really probably about 11 people now know. You know.
Welcome to the inner circle, 11 people.
You did it.
Nice to have you.
It's our 13.
Yeah. All righty.
Well, that's it. We'll be so we were originally going to do this last week. So we normally do the podcast every 2 weeks. So we had to push back because I didn't do my homework in time for our previously scheduled recording. So Christian and I are going to be back next Wednesday. So in a week and a day with our next episode. Christina and Emma have their audio podcast that'll drop, I think, tomorrow in real time as well. So we'll get back onto the schedule. Sorry about the little hiccups over the last week or so, but we shall be back soon.
We will. Erin will not.
Sorry.
But she might be invited again at some point.
I think so.
Okay.
TBD. Okay. TBD.
You didn't screw it up. Let's just say that. You didn't screw it up, Erin. You didn't screw it up.
Thank you. That's really good to know.